We are back for part two, which is the sort of basics of Judaism, and we are today our we're going to get ready for Purim. But as we do that, I'm going to start with a bit of a sort of um, a sort of a premise for Purim. Let's talk about it in these terms. There's a lot of debate today about whether or not Yom Ha'atzmaut should be a religious holiday. Right? I mean, we in this community, thank God, is a very Zionistic community. We're a community that supports Israel by and large. But there are debates about whether or not Yom Ha'atzmaut is a holiday. And I'll just reflect on Yeshiva University. And Yeshiva University is very interesting because it is the intersection of a lot of different kinds of modern Orthodoxy. But in Yeshiva University, there's always a debate. Should we say, do we say Tachanun? Do we say the penitential prayers on Yom Ha'atzmaut? Do we say, do we say Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut? Do we say Hallel with a blessing on Yom Ha'atzmaut? And this reflects different positions. Like in sort of classic Lithuanian yeshivot, I'm sure in like the Lakewood Yeshiva in Ner Yisrael, they don't. Yom Ha'atzmaut's not a day. It's just a, it's just a It's it's just the 5th of ER, same as the 4th
Mhm.
of ER, same as the 6th of ER. Nothing special happens that day.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and the question is, we need to appreciate this. The question is, when do events of history um, uh, demand that you're supposed to start a new holiday, right? Um, on the other end of the spectrum, the the Yom HaShoah is also a new holiday. And there's a lot of debate. Should Yom HaShoah be a holiday, right? This is um, this is a very contentious thing, right? So how do you know when you're allowed to and when you're not? So Purim fundamentally is a the religious understanding behind this, which I would say for religious Zionists is almost an identical understanding, is that you have to be sensitive to the hand of God in history. When the hand of God in history does something unique, you got to respond. The entire Jewish world, right? The Persians covered the entire Jewish world at that time. So the Persians covered the entire Jewish world, then, and the decree was to destroy all the Jewish people. This was this was a calamity, and so that calamity was averted. When the calamity is averted, then you have to there has to be some celebration. So this is what Purim is, and I should say that throughout various communities, um, if the Jews of um, Gibraltar were under attack, if the Jews of Grenada were um, somehow under a decree that maybe there was an invader who was coming who was going to oppress them. When those things were averted, there was a there was they each individual community had this own sort of small Purim Katan that would celebrate that. Now, th the other way you can ask the same question is, wait a minute, how do we make the blessing Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvotav vitzivanu likroat hamigila? Blessed are you, Lord our God, who gave us the commandment to read the Megillah. And the answer to that question is that the 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 mitzvah that's referred to when we read the Megillah is really the mitzvah of rabbinic authority. It's the mitzvah that you have to listen to the rabbis as they give you instruction. And the Talmud has given us instruction vis-a-vis the Megillah, vis-a-vis reading the Megillah. And the Megillah has four separate mitzvot. and each of them has parameters. I think it's also worthwhile appreciating a couple of fundamental facts about the Megillah. And so I'm going to um, um, pull up the text of Megillah and share that with you. Give me 1 second here to get that up. Okay. Um, Sharing my screen. Here we go. Now, there are a couple things to appreciate. Number one is God's name never appears in the Megillah. Um, and um, the one of the most common word, the way a Megillah is written, um, show you an example right now. Um, Actually, I'm gonna stop share for a minute so you can see on my. So this is the Megillah, and you'll see that each of the columns starts with a word. And that word, I'll just keep going, scrolling through the columns. You'll see the same word, right? What word is that? That word is Hamelach, the king, right? Is that able to be seen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
right. So that is a very typical way to write a Megillah. And that writing of the Megillah is a reflection of the fact that you see God in the background, which is not an accidental fact for the story of the Megillah. The Megillah also is maybe the second book of the Bible after once you have the Exodus and maybe the Chumash itself, right? After we actually get into the land of Israel, all the books, Yoshua, Joshua, Judges, Kings, um, I forgot Samuel, Kings, um, and then Isaiah, Jeremiah are all in the land of Israel. All the other minor prophets are in the land of Israel. The only exception to that is Yechezkel, is the book of Ezekiel. He is talking about the land of Israel, even though he sits in Babylon. But Esther is the book which talks about the diaspora and sits in the diaspora. So it is narrated from the diaspora about the diaspora. It is a diaspora book. In certain ways, the book of Esther is the book for all of us. Because for all of us, I say us now who live out here in Vancouver. We are not the Jews who live in the land of Israel. And when in the land of Israel, Esther maybe plays a much more minor story. And I'm hopefully going to be able to prove to you that this book has a lot to say for you. So here, um, it starts about King Ahasuerus. He has this 127 provinces, and he's on the throne, and Persia and Media, and he has this big party. And the first parts describe the party. Um, and there's no restrictions on the drinking, right? And then Vashti has a whole banquet, and the what the Jews are faulted for in the Talmud are their participation in these parties. That these parties of unlimited drinking were parties because it in the Hebrew it tells us um, I'm much better at this in Hebrew. Um, Hold on. Uh, uh, I think I got it here. I don't know why they translate it this way. So here, royal wine was served in abundance, benefits the king, in gold beakers, beakers of varied design. The these words, v'kelim shonim. This when you read this, and in shul, so you'll forgive my poor articulation of this, but the Megillah Trup has a certain sound to it. Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh, hamolech mehodavat kush, sheva, v'esrim u'meya medina, bayamim haheim, kishevet, hamelech Achashverosh, al kisei malchuto, asher b'Shushan habira. So you get a sense of what the music is like for that. When you get to these words that I've highlighted, you read it, v'kelim mikelim shonim. What is kelim mikelim shonim? That means of different vessels. It's read in the music of the Book of Lamentations, because here are the Jews at the party. What's out at the party? Kelim mikelim shonim. Varied vessels are the vessels of the temple. He brings out the vessels of the temple as if he has conquered God, right? He has sort of established himself as all good Mesopotamian kings, like some kind of god. Doesn't have to deal with the God of the Hebrews.
Slicha,
So,
Rabbi, are you sharing? I don't see the sharing.
oh, did I not share? Oh, thank you. Okay, sorry.
Oh, thanks.
V'kelim mikelim shonim. So this is the verse of different vessels. Okay, thank you. Now I'm on the right place. Okay, now we've now killed Vashti. We are about to get to the story of the beauty pageant. Um, okay. Now, chapter 2 starts after these things, when the king's anger subsided. He remembered Vashti, and he's going to send out letters to do this beauty pageant. And then we're going to learn about our hero. Ish Yehudi Hayash b'Shushan Habira. There was a Jewish man in Shushan Habira, Ushemo Mordechai, and his name was Mordechai. Now, we love the name Mordechai. Mordechai today is a very good Jewish name. Is Mordechai a Jewish name in its inception?
It's Marduk.
No.
Jewish at
No.
all. Marduk, the god Marduk.
Who is what?
The god Marduk of the Persian.
Persian.
Right. He's a god of war, right?
Mhm.
So we already have but Mordechai, to be fair, he occupies both worlds. He's a rabbi named Andrew, so to speak, right? He's got a good Goyish name, and he is he's
Rabbi, you can't call your name Goyish in front of your mom. That's not. She gave you a beautiful name, a menschlich name.
Okay.
Yes, they gave him two names, a Goyish and a Jewish.
So anyway, right. And look, let me put it this way. For those of us who were at Gil Troy last night, and he was telling us interestingly how, his name used to be Troyansky. His father named it to Troy, and his Hebrew name is Gilad, but he can shorten it to Gil. And he told the story about some freshman at Harvard with him who turned to him and said, it's so good to meet another WASP, right? So, that's sort of the funny thing is that, we Jews can pass. So this is Mordechai's the first Jew who passes, right? But he's Ben Yair, Hebrew name Ben Shimi, another Hebrew name Ben Kish, another Hebrew name Ishimini, a Benjaminite, right? Now, when you read this in the synagogue, right? So this first verse is read in Megillah Trup. Ishudi hayabashushan abira ushemo Mordechai ben Yair ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish Ishimini asher hagla Yerushalayim im hagola asher haglata im Yechonya melech Yehuda Asher hegla Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel. You shift into the Eichatrop. You have this the Lamentations singing. You shift this in between this idea that you have this this Jew, but he comes from this exile from Jerusalem. Now, sentence 7 is super important. Vayihi Omenet Hadassah. He was the adopted parent. They translate foster father to Hadassah. He Esther. So Hadassah's uh, so funny. My daughter in Rutgers. So I think in her classes she goes by Rachel, but her family calls her Racheli. So she tells us she met this girl, um, whose name was who she knows as Rebecca or maybe Becca, and um, and her family's very religious, and they're coming out to Whistler to ski, like maybe the first week of January or something like that. And I said to her, Racheli, I am sure that she to her family is Rivka. Um, and so they went skiing together, and she skied with her brothers and with this friend, um, and I said, yeah, so is her name really Rivka? She says, no, they all call her Rivki, right? So this is what we know this story, right? That you're at home, you're Racheli, and in polite society, you're Rachel, right? So this is a duality. This is a very diaspora duality, right? That you have Hadassah, who is Esther. By the way, Esther is also not a Jewish name, right? Esther
Ashtoreth.
is a goddess,
Ashtar, yeah.
right? Astarte, right? So here we have and not only that, right? Mordechai gives her a command. Um, Sentence 10. Lo higida et Esther et amav et moladeta, ki Mordechai tziva asher lo tagid. Because Mordechai has commanded her not to say anything, right? Don't wear the chai necklace out, please. We don't need the tsaros, right? This is you keep your religion to yourself. Tell me this is not the diaspora story, right? That you're a Jew in the home, but you are a Babylonian. Just by the way, you know, like this is not a story of. Do you know that Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch was a great modern Orthodox rabbi? He was also an anti-Zionist. Why was he an anti-Zionist? Because in his day, under the German Empire, if you were going to advance a cause of Jewish nationalism, you were going to invite unspeakable anti-Semitism onto your community, right? The reason that those of you who maybe attended my Israel before World War One talk, do you know that where's the first Zionist Congress held?
Basel,
Basel, right? Where's Herzl from?
Vienna. Well, actually,
Vienna.
Hungary,
Yeah,
Vienna.
right.
Yeah,
So he's born in Budapest, or he grows up in Budapest, and he works for a newspaper in Hungary, right? And
Vienna.
he meets with the German Kaiser, right, in order to try and advance the cause of Zionism. Why are they not holding the the Zionist Congress in Vienna or
Because all
in
the rabbis objected. The only place they were accepting it was in Basel, Switzerland.
because the German rabbi said the German delegate said you cannot hold this in Germany. It's going to be seen as an act of treason, right? Jews sometimes have to keep their profiles low, right?
But also,
And so,
Rabbi, the idea was to not be, it's like creating a capital city in the middle of nowhere. Wasn't it also like who's Hashkafa and didn't you teach us that as well? Like, there's obviously keeping the profile low, but if you do it in one city versus another city, you're asking one rabbi to come to, he
yeah,
collected all the.
there may be in some element of that as well, but I can say for certain the German rabbis.
We're afraid of,
I'll give you a conclusive proof. What was the final resolution for the first Zionist Congress? It said to create a Jewish homeland. Why did they use the word homeland or
Just like
homestead?
oh,
Why did they use that word? Because you can't use the word state.
Mhm.
You can't sit and talk about in Germany, which is an imperial power, which is fighting, Britain and Russia and all these others to carve up the world and have their own little, different areas. The proposal that was is, we'll represent Germany in the Middle East. We'll make a Jewish German state. If assuming that's what, when he had the meeting with the Kaiser. But you can't make a declaration that you're going to have a Jewish state. It had to be a homeland. So
That's the
there's
same
there's a,
language.
just a way Jews talk outside the house and Jews talk inside the house.
It's the same language in the Declaration, Balfour Declaration, homeland.
For similar reasons,
Mhm.
right? And the Balfour Declaration, in and of itself, is a miracle that it happened, right?
Yes.
So, and just so you know, the Balfour Declaration, just this is actually an instructive point. The Balfour Declaration was good for Britain because Britain didn't want France to get its cotton picking hands, so to speak, or its French fry dipping hands on on the the land of Israel, right? Britain was more than happy to be able to have someone who is passionate about developing and representing its interests in the land of Israel. And so it worked out well for everybody for maybe 5 minutes, right?
Mhm.
But the this is a very classically Jewish story. Now here I'm gonna zoom out of the text for a moment, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a parallel between three figures in the uh, in the Tanakh: Joseph, Esther, Daniel. Each of them grows up in the diaspora. Three different locations, although two of them are in similar ones. Joseph grows up in Egypt, right? And each of them, in a way, grows up without a parent. They sort of become an independent person, right? Maybe this is a metaphor for the estrangement of the first generation from the immigrant generation, right? The immigrant generation doesn't know how to speak the language. They don't know the cultural norms. The first generation in there does. How many funerals have I done where I talked about, how this 14-year-old boy would translate for his parents and grandparents, when the mail came, right? So th each of them grows up in as an orphan in a foreign country. So you have Esther in Persia, Daniel in Babylon, and you have um, uh, Joseph in Egypt. Each of them has a name which is not a Jewish name. What's Joseph's non-Jewish name?
Safnat Paneach.
Yeah.
Safnat Paneach. Good. What is Daniel's? Anybody know?
No.
I think it's um
Shazar, kind of.
Belshazzar or
Halomot.
something like that,
Halomot.
right?
Isha Halomot with his with his vision with the dry bones.
Well, no, but that's Yechezkel. That's Yechezkel, not
Oh, you
Daniel.
said Daniel. Slicha, slicha,
Daniel.
התבלבלתי. סליחה.
Daniel.
I think it's a double name, if I remember correctly. Don't know.
It is, oh, okay. Belteshazzar.
Mm.
Okay, Belteshazzar.
Oh.
So he has also this name. And who else has a name? So Hadassah has the name Esther. Now, they also all have a challenge. Joseph's challenge is Mrs. Potiphar, right? Does Joseph meet his challenge? Yes. He
Yes.
does not become intimate with Mrs. Potiphar. What is Daniel's challenge? Daniel's challenge is very interesting in this. Daniel's challenge is to maintain a kosher diet, and he refuses to eat the king's food. Um, and so he keeps kashrut. And Esther's challenge is also very interesting because Esther's challenge is to not remain hidden. Esther's challenge is to speak up and say, this is my people. I've got to represent here. And they're all three of them are very diaspora challenges, right? Because seduction, the idea of intermarriage and the being seduced out of the continuity of Israel into, if you will, the lap of Mrs. Potiphar is emblematic of of that idea of stepping out of your faith by creating a family that is different. Kashrut also, incidentally, I think fits very squarely into this because the laws of keeping kosher are very much designed about preserving identity. The best example of that is matzah, but certainly also not eating pork. It's an element of Jewish identity. But I would say all of kashrut is about maintaining identity. The people you eat with, the people you socialize with, are the people you identify with. And Judaism bakes that into the fabric of Jewish law immediately. And then here, Esther's challenge is this challenge of, in a way, politically, standing up for yourself. It would have been very easy to a certain extent for Esther to say, I'm going to be a hidden Jew. They're not going to come kill me. They would kill Hadassah, but I'm Esther. There are 20 girls here named Esther, right? Esther's like Christy, right? That's, if you name people after gods, that's a lot of people get named after the gods, right? So you see this. This is a story about the diaspora. It is a story about a certain kind of preservation. Its lessons are exceedingly sharp today. If you found yourself a little bit uncomfortable watching people conduct a Passover Seder at the encampment at Columbia University, right? That is cowering to the cultural norms that surround you without standing up for your people, right? That is the alternate story to Esther. That is the sort of the inverted Esther. And so this is a very, very poignant moment, right, in the latter part of the story of Esther. We also have to appreciate something else about Esther. And here I'll go to chapter 4. And I think people don't understand this about the book of Esther. We dress our daughters up like Queen Esther, and not that we shouldn't. But has anyone ever had a conversation around the dinner table that goes like this? How do we feel about the fact that Esther seduced the king? And what do we think happened after the story was over? Right? It is, by the way, it is a matter of fact in Jewish law and probably in all ancient legal systems that the queen does not marry after the king dies. That once you are a partner of the king in, whether as wife or concubine, you are not going to develop a romantic relationship with anyone else. It doesn't happen afterwards. That you are the king's property forever. It is an irreversible kind of bond. And so, the joke that I like to make is, it is not like in the 11th chapter of the Megillah. There's only 10 chapters, but it's not like in the 11th chapter of the Megillah, Esther gets to turn to Achashverosh and says, I really always wanted to be a Beis Yaakov mother, and so, I want to marry a guy in Kolel, and so we're gonna, if you don't mind, Achashverosh, please give me a divorce, and I'm gonna go speak to a shadchan, so I can marry a guy in Kolel, right? That's not how it works. In fact, the Midrash says, who's Esther's son? Anybody know this?
No.
No.
It's not mentioned.
Darius the Great.
Daryavish.
Right. Darius the Great. Right?
Oh,
That's they understood Esther's son. So Esther takes one for the team here. I'm just going to show you where this appears in the Megillah. But Esther's sacrifice is the ultimate sacrifice. She's I'm going to use this term because I think it might help us emotionally understand it. She's Yoni Netanyahu. She goes into the lion's den and she saves the hostage multitudes of the children of Israel, but she doesn't come out. She doesn't come back out. Right? Now here, this yes, it's what she needed to do to save the Jewish people, Sylvia. Absolutely, I don't disagree. But let's, I think I want to say we turn Esther into a Disney queen, a Disney princess. She's not that. She's much more sophisticated than that. And so just I'm going to give two more little pieces on Esther, just so we appreciate what this story really is about. So Esther says to Achashverosh, Mordechai says to Esther, you got to go speak to the king. And Esther says, I can't go speak to the king. You're not allowed to go speak to the king unless you're called. And he hasn't called me in 30 days. So Mordechai responds to Esther, sorry, honey, this is not your mission if you choose to accept it. This works differently. Vayomer Mordechai lashiv Esther. Mordechai responds to Esther, Al tidami benafshech limalei beit hamelech mikol Yehudim. Don't think that you are going to be able to escape from the fate of all the Jews. Ki im hacharesh tacharishi be'et hazot. If you remain silent now, revach v'atzala yamod laYehudim mimakom acher. Safety and salvation, rescue and salvation will come to the Jewish people from a different place. You and your father's house will die out. Who knows if this is why you have gotten, this could be your purpose. This could be your moment. You cannot fail to do this. Vatomer Esther lashiv el Mordechai. Esther says back to Mordechai, Lech kenoset kol hayudim. Bring all of the Jews together. Hanimtzim b'Shushan uv'tzumu alai. They should fast for me. V'al tochlu v'al tishlu shloshet yamim. Don't eat and don't drink 3 days. Laila v'yom ga'ani v'narotai atzum kein. I and my maidens will do similarly. V'chein avo al hamelech. And this is how I will approach the king. Asher lo kedat, which is not according to the law. And here, these last 3 words are very, very profound words. V'chasher avadati avadati. And as I am lost, I am lost. The Talmud says that these words are as follows. It's meant, the way they understand it, and this could be, again, the way the Midrash amplifies the underlying meaning of the story. The Talmud, at least according to one opinion of the Talmud, Esther is married to Mordechai. And what it means is that she is going to have to seduce Achashverosh. Once she seduces Achashverosh, she can no longer, even legally, even if Achashverosh died, even if there was a rule in Persia that she's allowed to return to some other romantic partner. The Jewish law is a woman who is willfully unfaithful can no longer return to her husband. And so this is Esther saying, okay, if this is what I got to do, this is what I got to do. But I will be lost. This will be the end of our relationship. Just to intensify this little theme of the Megillah just a little bit further. The theme of the Megillah a little bit further is as such, that in order for Esther to hatch her plot, there's all this very big buildup to what Esther's about to do. And so Esther is going to go into the king. She's going to be accepted. And then she makes a request. And you would think that the request would be big. But what's her request? Her request is to invite Haman to a party. Okay, maybe she's going to spring the trap there. When he gets to the party, what happens at that party? Anybody remember what Achashverosh offers her half the kingdom. What does she ask for?
Another party.
Another party.
So the Talmud has a very interesting discussion, Masechet Megillah, about what the party was all about. There's a whole bunch of different answers. There may be 6 or 7 answers there. One of those answers, the one I find most cogent, is she is trying to make Achashverosh jealous of Haman. That's what she's doing. Because, you know, maybe she doesn't want to fight the Jewish question in the open, right? And Haman is when she gets to the second party, she springs this, I think, this whole bit about the fact that, Haman is going to kill all the Jews, and she asks for her people, etc. So hold on. So Achashverosh says, and who is this who's going to do this? Who is it he who dared do this? And she says, it is the adversary, the enemy, this evil Haman. And Haman cringes in terror. And so the king is so upset, he goes out into the garden, he walks around. And then Haman is begging Esther. And it says, Hamelech shav miginat habitan. The king came back from the garden, El Beit HaMishtet, to the dining room, I guess. You might banquet room is how they translate it. The Haman nofel al hamita, asher Esther aleha. And Haman has fallen upon the bed where Esther is laying. And the king says, Hagam lichbosh et hamalka imi babayit? Are you going to ravish the queen in my own palace? Right? What are you thinking? Right? This is the ultimate. She stings Haman with the crime of ravishing the queen, or attempted rape of the queen. Right? And that's how Haman ends. So I just want to point out that again, Esther is using, the Talmud says that that seduction is the weapon of women. That if women want to compete on the battlefield, this is their weapon. And Esther is a very good example of this. The Talmud will give us other examples of that. Yael is another famous example of that. What does this story tell you? This story tells you that the diaspora is filled with great challenges. That you are going to, the Megillah itself has built into it all the features of anti-Semitism. There is this people who are spread out amongst all of your peoples, and they don't follow the laws of the land, right? This is, you can translate that as, we're all good communists. They're not, they're capitalists. You could say that we all believe in the Christian Savior and they don't. It could be we all hate settler colonialism and they don't. Whatever your prevailing orthodoxy is, the Jews do not adopt the authority of the king. And it is going to, the Megillah describes a very dangerous diaspora picture. And it demonstrates the need for the Jews to be as crafty and wily as they possibly can in order to survive. And even the heroine of the story has to do what is almost unthinkable for a Jewish woman to do in order to save the Jewish people. In many ways, this book is a condemnation of living outside of Israel. This book is a book that sits in the Tanakh and tells you that God will protect you outside the land of Israel, but the price will be immense. And so I think that there's, especially now, there is a sense that the Megillah is pushing the Jewish people back to the land of Israel. It represents the rescue of the Jews in the diaspora, and maybe one of the most important things, going back to chapter 4. If I had to turn Esther into a bumper sticker, a single bumper sticker, it would be the following words. Went too far. Just sorry, get to them. No. No, that's not it. You're not far. Don't forget. I don't disagree, but I would tell you um, the following.
כאשר עבדתי,
It would
עבדתי.
no. It would be רווח והצלה יעמוד ליהודים ממקום אחר. The Jewish people, God promises the Jewish people will survive. God will not destroy the Jewish people. How that happens, whole different story, right? And yes, I agree. You cannot be Hacharish Tacharishi, right? Right? You cannot be, Al Tidami benafshech limalet, right? All of these things, yes. But one of the things that the Megillah promises us is that there will ultimately be a survival to the Jewish people. But the Megillah is it's an emergency raft. It is not the long-term plan for the Jewish people. And I think I think it's meant to be a cautionary tale about living in the diaspora. It is the book that describes diaspora living. And so I think that part of appreciating the Megillah is the appreciation that of that piece. Now, there is one other very, very, I think, very important aspect of the Megillah, which also needs to be understood. And this will bring us into at least the very beginnings of understanding how Purim is observed. Now, just structurally, even after Esther does all these fancy things, she seduces Haman, she seduces Achashverosh, does all of these things. What happens at the end? At the end, she simply gets the right of the Jews to defend themselves. Right? So it's not really like it's that much better. Yeah, okay, so maybe she maybe she kills Goring, maybe she kills Hitler, maybe the rallying point is gone, maybe the chief antagonist is has been eliminated. So that's certainly something of value. But still the anti-Semites are lining up to kill the Jews anyway, right? She gets the ability to protect them. One of the things which is just very interesting, and you'll see that this word, lihi kahel, that they will come together as congregations, right? It's used I think three different times to simply talk about the way in which the Jews protect themselves. It is and it is in contradistinction to the beginning of the Megillah, where Haman's accusation is, Hine am mifuzar mifurad ben hamim. There is a people who are spread out and separated from in our kingdom, and they come together. Now, the reason I say that this is something which translates into the story or into how we observe this is Purim is the only holiday which, by design, takes place on different days. I'll just take the simplest case. The Mishnah has many other cases. It tells you, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 are the days that it can take place. But this day and age, this is a Purim Shulash, I believe, because in Israel, Purim will take place in Tel Aviv. It will take place on Friday, and in Jerusalem, it will be celebrated on Sunday.
Monday.
Oh,
Am I wrong?
No, you're not, because there was a wall around Jerusalem, so all the cities walk in have a different date.
Right. So
Like
Jerusalem,
Shushan.
right. It's Shushan. Normally, Shushan Purim is last year. I think we had Purim on Sunday, so it was Sunday in Jerusalem, Sunday in Tel Aviv, Monday in Jerusalem. But this year it's called Purim Mishulash because you have a Shabbat in between, right? So,
Yes.
but it's very odd. There's no other holiday. It's not like Pesach. Somebody was telling me that he once had a girlfriend who was so Jew-ish that her family decided that it was inconvenient for them to do Seder on the night when Seder's supposed to take place. So they decided to do it like 3 nights later.
On a
Right?
Friday night, on the weekend.
Oh, whatever. I don't know what the calendar was, but nobody does that, right? Temple Shalom and Shaare Zedek agree that the first night of Pesach is the first night of Pesach, right? We never disagree about that. We never disagree about when Rosh Hashanah starts, right? It's not like somebody does Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos because it's inconvenient for people to take off work on a Tuesday, right? That just doesn't happen. But Purim has that different day thing. And I would say that Purim is the hyper-local holiday because the mitzvot of Purim all force you to reinforce the elements of local community. But maybe that's a good place for me to stop because we'll be able to look at all of those features next week in terms of the specific elements of this.